the opposite of anxiety in the brain is not calm, it's creative. And it all starts with curiosity. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that one, years ago, I really got like in an obsessive year or two about the connection between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex.
So you know all the words.
Yeah. And I've talked about it here on my podcast and how you flip-flop between the two.
Yeah.
And you can't be in one, like you can't live in both of them. You're either in that highly creative or you're in the highly anxious. Would we help ourselves if we asked a question every time there was something that was felt threatening to us? If we asked a question, does that immediately pull us into that prefrontal cortex?
I think it probably does. And I've been practicing it since I've found it out by reading research. And I've found that it's remarkably powerful. You may have had the experience of going past an accident and it's horrible and you're terrified that somebody was hurt, but you are also really curious. You know, if you can turn on the curiosity, there is the activist Valerie Kaur cites a study where people who saw others that looked different, so they were dressed differently, they had different skin color, different customs, whatever, immediately the amygdala went, whoa, alien, and then the storytelling and the control started. And if they could get people to just answer this, or just ask this one question, I wonder what that person has for dinner, all of those biases and fears would give way. And suddenly they'd be trying to pick up information, thinking about times they'd had ethnic food, the smell of it, wondering what the family structure was like. And immediately they stopped othering these people nearly as much and became more approachable, more loving, and feeling more safe. And I really want to say this. People who don't feel safe get obstreperous and they get angry. They get into that part of that anxiety spiral that you were just talking about. And they act from fight or flight, which scares other people, who then act from fight or flight, which scares the first people more, and it just goes back and forth and back and forth. If you can step into anything that's stressful in your life and start asking questions. In fact, Judson Brewer, this great psychiatrist who wrote a book about anxiety, he would sometimes address anxiety in his patients just by looking at something and going, and they'd be like, what? And they'd start looking around. And he and a colleague did this with a whole team of athletes they were working with. And after that, the whole team, whenever they got anxious or needed to cheer up, they'd just start going, And just saying that, just making that noise makes you sort of want to poke around. And you're into the whole part of the brain that does the connection and creativity. And you're right, it toggles with anxiety. And anxiety is not there anymore.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is so good. Okay. So we've got our sanctuary we're creating. And then we have our questions that we are asking in the anxious moment. Anything else we can do, other tools we can do to sort of move ourselves out of that state?
Yeah, you go into your sanctuary, you settle in among your glimmers, you really physically touch them, taste them. You notice where there's anxiety, you're kind to the creature that is scared inside you. I call this KIST. KIST, for kind internal self-talk. And you just say, may you be well, little creature. May you be happy. I'm here for you. I love you. Now, what are you curious about? And whatever it's curious about, it's like working with a little kid now. You give it what it wants. I started doing this. I was writing during the pandemic. I was finding all this out. And I decided to test it on myself. And I would get up in the morning. I'd say to my anxiety creature, does anything make you curious? Well, it wanted to draw. So I was like, okay, you can draw for a month. And my brain changed. Like the experience of my inner life changed completely during that month. It was like being on the best drugs you can imagine.
And you just drew all day?
I just drew and painted. I thought, well, I'll go on to other things. But I never did. I just wanted to draw and paint. And we had a 2-year-old in the house. And so she and I would go out in the woods and I would take pictures of her with my camera. And then I'd come back and draw and paint pictures of her. And I realized that I was really focused on her because the part of me that was drawing was also a toddler. And had that kind of, toddlers supposedly laugh 400 times a day and adults 15 times a day. I was in full toddler mode and just having a blast and no anxiety whatsoever. Like it was the least anxious time of my life, and I intend to replicate it.